Greetings, students, and welcome to this episode of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the site, this is the blog, and this is the podcast that you go to in order to learn more about different destinations, to discuss them as a community, to hopefully travel there, and to enjoy life more. Now, you can always reach me on a variety of different social media sites, of course, starting with my website at theprofessortravel.com. You can also find me on both YouTube and Facebook at The Professor Travel. I'm now available on TikTok at The Professor Travel. You can find me also on Instagram if you find the_professor_travel. I can be reached on Twitter at the Professor TR1. And then finally, if you're a blogger, you can find me at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I have a return visiting professor visiting with us today, Jennifer Cisna. Hi, Jennifer. How are you doing today?
Hey, Scott. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And by the way, we're filming this on St. Patrick's Day, so happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well.
Thank you. I don't think I have my green on. Oh, my picture has green.
That's right. There's a lot of greenery. In fact, for those who are able to see this on the video, can you share with us a little bit about what's going on in this picture? Because it's really kind of interesting.
Sure. This was our recent trip to Uganda. And in the background, I don't know if you can tell what they are, but in the background are gorillas. And so this was nap time for them. And so you can see the silverback right directly behind my head and a littler, smaller one to my left. So that's
They're adorable. Oh,
and
that's
it's
so
in
beautiful.
the rainforest of Uganda.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to talk a lot about the different places that you went to, but before we get into that, can you talk to us maybe, especially for the people who, for whatever reason, didn't see your last video, can you maybe talk a little bit about your educational credentials and maybe a couple of places that you've traveled to as well?
Of course. Well, my education is I have a Master of Arts in Organizational Management, and I am currently retired, so I have the ability to go and do some traveling, which has been wonderful. And let's see, some of the places I've been, I won't necessarily bore you with all the different places, but more importantly, some of my favorite places would be Africa, of course. So this is Uganda, South Africa, Tanzania. Let's see, in the Galapagos. So those are just some of my favorite places, and you probably saw a pattern there. We try to, my husband and I are animal lovers, and so we try to tie something animal related to the different trips that we go to.
And it's educational too, because it seems like you learn a lot as you go into each of these trips. Plus, you're able to do a little bit for each of those locations in a lot of cases.
Right, absolutely.
Wonderful. So as you mentioned, for the purpose of this specific vlog and podcast, we're going to talk about Uganda, which is not a place that a lot of people go to. Tell me, why did you decide to go there, and how long did it take for you to plan that kind of a trip?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm usually the one who does a lot of the planning on the trips, and which this one was no different with the planning, but the idea came from my husband. He has for quite a while now really wanted to go and see the mountain gorillas. Oh. And so I decided, well, Africa, mountain gorillas, that sounds good to me. So it probably took, I think I started a year ago. And so close to 12 months, because I'm like, Uganda, I don't even know where to start. So I decided to do some reviews and, get on the internet, try to search for a company. And I found a great company, which I know we'll talk about later. And they helped me out a lot as far as what we needed to do. And that's why it was really my husband and wanting to go see those mountain gorillas.
Well, they're beautiful. I've seen a few pictures of them and videos of them that I really appreciate you sharing. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Just out of curiosity, and I know we haven't talked about this yet, but was Uganda or any of the area around there related to any of the work that Jane Goodall did?
Oh, sure. I don't remember exactly because, so this rainforest that these mountain gorillas are in, it's really there's one smaller place north, but this is where they live,
Hmm.
in this area, in this rainforest. And it's the impenetrable rainforest. And it covers 3 different countries. So you have Rwanda, which is a smaller country south of Uganda, and you have Uganda, and you have the Republic of Congo.
Okay.
That rainforest covers those 3 countries. And so that is where the bulk of the mountain gorillas live.
Wow, nice. That's so beautiful. And then on top of that, did you talk to us a little bit about the travel there? Did it require a visa? Did it require any special travel medications? Or alternatively, did it require that you change your eating habits in order to better adapt to that environment?
Yeah, well, that's interesting, Scott, because I've only really been to one other place that really required a physical visa, not an automatic one for the United States, which happens in a lot of countries. But yes, so you did have to apply for a visa.
Okay.
And now it was, because I'd never done it. Hopefully this will help people. I tried so hard to do this online because it's supposed to be so easy. You get online, you go through the visa, and you get a printout, super easy, right?
Okay.
Well, not for me. So what happened was my computer had a firewall. So I couldn't advance and I was getting frustrated. So I ended up just going to a travel agency who said they could help me with the visa. And it turns out it was really just because of a setting on my computer. So for those of you who try that if you're not succeeding in getting through the process. But it was really easy. We got a letter back in our email saying you've been approved for so many days. And we had it right there. We could print it off. And now we had our documentation.
I have a question for you on that, actually. Were those days flexible, or were they set days? Like, you are approved from this day to this day, and that's it?
It said for 9 days, because for me, because they say, when are you going to come into the country? When are you going to leave? And so it turned out to be 9 days. And so they said, you have 9 days. I think I had 10 for some reason. Maybe the person doing the approvals gave me an extra day in case something happened, but my husband had 9. So we had to get out of the country. I don't even think they had the dates. It was more the number of days that you could be there.
Okay. All right. Now, I know from our previous video, you had talked about some inoculations that you had gotten previously. Were there any updated inoculations that you needed to get for this trip?
Well, I had mine because of Tanzania, but my husband had to get the yellow fever.
Okay.
So Uganda is a yellow fever area. And so we had to have documentation and the certificate that we had that.
Okay.
And so Passport Health, for those of you who aren't familiar, like where do I get a yellow fever? Passport Health is a company throughout the nation that you can go into, the local shop or area office. And the other one that I decided to get, because northern, even though we weren't in northern Uganda, meningitis was,
Really?
yes, go figure. So I got the meningitis. I went to Rite Aid, but I know CVS would do it at all as well. Went in there and just asked them for it and got it. And it was very inexpensive. The yellow fever is more expensive because you have to go into Passport Health to get that.
I'm familiar with the yellow fever, and the one I also hear is Hep A or Hep B, one of those two.
I have those. When I was going to South Africa and Tanzania, I do have Hep A and Hep B.
Okay.
And so wise to get those in South Africa. It depends on where you go. The countries haven't up to this point asked for that except for only the yellow fever. But I think just to be prudent, you should get the ones you can, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. No, that makes perfect sense. So in thinking about this trip, how did you pre-pack for it? I mean, you were going to be gone for the 9 days in Uganda, plus how many? I understand that you also were in South Africa for quite some time too.
Yeah. Well, South Africa is a different story because I keep a lot of clothes there because I go so often. So I have a big container of clothes over there. So, but for my husband who doesn't have that, yeah, so you have to think about it. And my big concern was Uganda because I'd never been there. So I was really focused on what do I need to make that trip a good one. Now, the company that we went through, and we'll talk about later, they sent a list of the things that you should bring.
Oh, good.
And yes, so it was very, very, very helpful. And gloves, which you may not think of, garden gloves, because you're hiking the jungle and at times, you know, you're reaching for branches and pulling up on those and you want to have your hands protected. But there's a lot of other things. And I wrote a couple things down for like best practices, but pre-packing, I guess I can talk about it here. One thing that I did, because remember, you're hiking the jungle, and I put bands around my pants legs, and you can buy them to keep critters, things out of your pant legs when you're hiking. So also good boots. I will talk a little bit later about my experience with the hike. And so make sure you have really good boots and that you've used them. And this isn't the first time that you put them on.
That would be very painful if it was.
Yes, but it was nice that they had a list. And so that was just helpful to make sure I went through and checked everything off.
Now, in our previous video that we had from you, you had talked about spraying down your clothes with a very specific item. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. That would be permethrin, Permethrin.
Okay.
And we use the brand by a company named Sawyer. It's a yellow bottle with a black handle. And we do use that religiously whenever we go to some place that we might think might have ticks or mosquitoes.
Okay.
So you just spray down your clothes. It lasts through, they say more, but I would say 2 to 3 washings.
Okay.
And it's really helpful. It has made a total difference. And in fact, when we were in Uganda, I remember in the rainforest, you'd think you'd get tons of mosquito bites.
Yeah.
I think I had maybe 2 the whole trip. So I think a big reason is because we wore a lot of long sleeves through the hikes and had our clothes sprayed.
Okay, very nice. And again, sun protection, what kind of stuff did you bring for that?
Both. In fact, I even bought some that had sunscreen and mosquito repellent all in one.
Okay.
And I used it and I didn't get burned and I didn't get many mosquito bites. So
Good job. Good job. Okay, so I'm assuming you left out of LAX. Is that correct?
We did. Actually, Scott, this was really interesting. We were able to fly out of Orange County, but we went to Orange County to New Jersey.
Okay.
And then from New Jersey, we went to Brussels.
Okay.
Rwanda. We stayed in the plane in Rwanda, and then we went to Uganda. Yeah, so it was a little bit crazy, but we made it there.
Well, and so it turns out then, for purposes of Orange County, you didn't leave your car there. You just had someone drop you off, maybe, or you took an Uber.
Someone dropped us off, but then we went to Johannesburg. I think we talked about that before, and then we went back through Germany to LAX.
Okay.
So it was quite a hectic travel trip schedule.
But you definitely got your passport stamped a couple times, or
Exactly.
yeah,
we have this nice visa in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would die to see like all the stamps you have on your passport, because you go a lot of places too. So that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I'm on my second passport because you know how you have to renew every 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm on a new one, so I'm kind of bummed that it's not as fun as the other one.
But they gave you back your old passport, right? When you renewed it? Okay, good.
Exactly.
Okay. By the way, note for my students. When you do have to get your passport renewed, you do have to send in your old one. Don't be afraid; they'll send it back with a little punch hole in it for you to keep as like a souvenir. So it's really kind of cool to keep it when you have that as like a little nice thing. So talk to me about the flights that you took in order to get over to Uganda. What airlines did you use? Jennifer, are you there? Oh, I think we might be having some technical difficulties. Let me see if I can get this.
Scott?
Yeah, hi, you there?
I'm so sorry.
No, no, that's okay. That's okay. I put it on pause when I realized you had not. I said, "Oh, we're having
Oh,
technical difficulties." It's okay. So
oh
I,
my
I,
goodness.
I paused us, so we're good on that. Um, are we ready to continue?
Yes, where were we? Can you remind me where we were?
Yeah, I'll re-ask you the question. I was going to ask what flights we were going to get to over from Orange County over to Uganda.
Oh, did I cut out then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to resume in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So here we are. Sorry about the minor technical difficulty that we had there. Apologize for that. So we were asking a little bit about the flights to get over to Uganda. Can you tell me, Jennifer, which flights you used in order to get over there?
Yes, we actually went through United,
Okay.
and we went from Orange County, which was great, to New Jersey, and we used a lot of partner airlines. And then we went from New Jersey to Brussels to Rwanda. We stayed in the plane in Rwanda and then had a slight layover and then flew on to Uganda and Entebbe
Okay.
um, that evening. So we got in about midnight.
Okay. And these were all through the United Star Network for the most part?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Are you a United Mileage Plus person?
Well, I've never really flown United before because
Oh.
I usually book the trips myself. So
Mhm.
I am now, but I usually book the trips myself and use different airlines to get to South Africa. And
Okay.
so maybe I'll use United in the future. We'll
You know,
see.
I've loved them. They've actually worked really well for me. So I encourage you to find an airline that works for you, of course, but they're one I like a lot.
Good. Okay.
So let's
No.
talk about, since it was a direct flight, it doesn't sound like you had any pre-vacation destinations going out. But what were your accommodations like when you got to Uganda?
Well, it's really interesting. When we signed up, we had a choice of different levels of accommodations, and depending on the level you wanted the company to uh, book you in,
Mhm.
then that would be different price points. And because it was relatively inexpensive, my husband like, yoo-hoo, let's go look luxury. So luxury by our standards and luxury by Uganda standards might be a little different.
Yeah.
But we liked it because even the luxury ones, some were very nice. And then some were more rustic, which I happen to like a lot. So, and then our food was a little inconsistent
Hmm.
on depending on where we stayed, how good the food was. But you know what? To us, it didn't really matter. It was more of the experience. And so, like I said, some places the food was to die for. It was great. And
Hmm.
other places, maybe not so much, but you can understand when you're in the middle of the jungle.
Yeah.
So,
I,
right,
yeah. Actually, I was going to ask you, what kind of cuisine did you get when you were in Uganda? What kind of main staples do they have over there?
a lot of places were some meat and potatoes.
Okay.
So kind of basic. You'd be surprised. So I think they might cater a little bit more to the tourists and have it a little bit more westernized.
Hmm.
But it was funny. One time we stopped on the side of the road. Our safari vehicle. We pulled over in a village that was there, and we pulled over as we're proceeding to stop. People from all over went boom, onto the car, and We were like, whoa. And they were selling apparently beef on sticks, beef kebabs, like on sticks. And so, at first you're like, whoa, I don't know. Do we want to try this? And we said, what the heck? We're in Uganda. Let's do what the Ugandans do. And so we ordered this. It was when we did the calculations, it turned out to be about 33 cents for a stick of all this beef on, and it was very good. So, yeah, hard to say, but they had great soups, and, for the most part, it was pretty good. We never went to a place that had bad food.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I have very specific, very picky standards when I travel, and I apologize for that.
Okay. That's okay.
But I do like the cultural experience at the same time. The one thing I want to always be cautious of, though, is if I do engage in, and I guess there's an argument to be made. Do you do the street food? Do you do the more upscale food? Where do you kind of go with that? And I guess the cultural experience is different depending upon what you decide to go with.
Right. Well, and our tour guide was from Uganda. And so we asked him, would you eat this stuff off the side of the road? And he's like, oh, of course. And so he put us to ease a little bit. And so we decided, well, it was our last day. So if we were going to get sick, we wouldn't miss anything important.
Okay.
So we tried it. But anyway, it was, so we kind of had the gamut of different levels of cuisine.
Okay. So let's actually start to talk about the itinerary. You're going to be there for 9 days. So walk us through kind of what your itinerary was day over day.
So when we got there late at night, we decided to stay at the Protea in Entebbe, and we decided to stay there for a couple days to get acclimated to the time difference.
Okay.
So we flew in, got in at midnight on a Thursday. They were great. They picked us up at the airport and had a sign waiting for us, so that was pretty cool. They took us back to the hotel. We stayed there for a couple days, and we were picked up on Saturday. Our first day, if you look at where Entebbe is, which is right on the edge of Lake Victoria, which is beautiful, we probably drove about 5-6 hours to our first stop because we had to get out closer to the jungle, right? And so we stayed at the Primate Lodge, which was one of my favorites. It was really fascinating. But I'm going here real quick to pull up the itinerary.
Of course.
The first stop was Kibale Forest. And so we stayed that day. The next morning we get up and we go to Kibale Forest, and we went on a chimpanzee trek. So we walked quite a ways. It was absolutely amazing. So you're in with tall trees, and you could hear the sounds of the chimps just going off. And now, we're trying to find them, and we'd see some in the trees, and we would think, oh, wow, what a great experience. And then it would kept getting better and better because we'd see them sitting right in front of us. And so it was crazy. It was surreal. It didn't feel real. There's a wild chimp right in front of me. And so that was just absolutely fascinating. We could only spend an hour with them.
Can I ask you a quick question about that? When you're traveling through the rainforest and you're looking at a wild chimp, now, my instinct is to be, okay, I want to be cautious because even though there are chimps that have been in captivity, or alternatively, those that may be a little bit more domesticated than the wild chimps are, they're still wild animals.
Yes.
And so there could be a risk of danger if you upset that chimp.
Yes.
How do you work with it, or how are you advised by your guide during that process?
Well, one of my frustrating parts of the trip is, the guides will tell you stay so far away from the chimps and eventually with mountain gorillas when we talk about that. But people are sometimes not very smart and they get too close. One thing that was, I wish the guides would have said something because they were getting way too close. I was getting uncomfortable for the chimps because they were getting too close.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, these guides get paid through tips. So I think they are hesitant to say, oh, back up, stay away from, the chimps, in fear of maybe not getting as good of a tip. So that was probably, if I could say, the most frustrating part of the whole trip. Not so bad with the mountain gorillas as it was with, because I guess maybe they're thinking mountain gorillas, I don't want to get too close to them. But the chimps, it was upsetting for me, someone who believes they should get further away. Now, these chimps are used to people coming into because they see people probably every day for an hour. People can only be there for an hour with the chimps. But, and I keep telling myself that those chimps, if they wanted to get away, they'd just climb a tree. And so that helped me get through it a little bit, but I still got kind of upset. And I found myself backing away more the closer other people would get because I just wanted to give them some space.
I think that's some good feedback, especially if we're talking about the preservation of their environment and their ecosystem. It's okay to be an observer, but the question is, let's talk about both their safety and your safety at the same time. And at the same time, what it means to be an observer rather than being an interactive person within their environment. And that might disturb them also.
Right. Yeah, there was one chimp that I just felt he's scared. He does not like these crowds of people. And he was just sitting there. And so anyway, yeah. So be smart, students, when if you decide to go someplace that has animals.
Exactly. So where did we go after that? How do we?
So after that, every day, I won't bore you with super details, but every day we were able to go on 2 different treks. So after that, we went and in the same area, we were able to visit an area and do a walk with another guide that got us close to, and we could observe other primates. So the colobus monkey, the coppertail monkey, some more baboons. So we had, it was a great experience. So we were just out walking and seeing all of them. Those we couldn't get too close to because they were monkeys. They were up in the tree or they were in a distance. They would run away from us if we did get too close.
That's fine. They do their own thing. So that's totally cool. But at least you have the opportunity to observe them in their natural environment and just hopefully everybody keep their distance. And so that way it's a good observational study.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
And then after that, we left the area. We were at the Primate Lodge in Kabali for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. And then we went off to, Queen Elizabeth National Park. This place was so cool. So we stayed at a really nice lodge. Our room overlooked the Lake Edwards that was there. Now, we went on a boat cruise was the first thing we did. And this boat cruise, Lake Edwards had the largest concentration of hippos in the world.
Wow.
So we were able to see up close in this boat. We would get pretty close to shore, but there were the hippos, but there were also the elephants and the buffalo, birds galore. It was absolutely amazing. And to go back to the videos and to see how big those elephants are compared to even the buffalo, they dwarfed the buffaloes, look so small next to them. But oh my gosh, it was absolutely amazing. And so we did that Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I was going to say on a side note, as glorious as that is, just in the same way that it's potentially a little bit dangerous to
Mhm.
approach a chimpanzee, hippos can be extremely aggressive. And
Yes.
both hippos, elephants have been known to kill people before too. So keeping your distance and still getting that really wonderful experience and seeing all the beauty that Uganda or any of these other places have to offer, it's a matter of both awe and respect, I think, in that same aspect. Would you agree with that?
Totally agree with that, Scott. And I was really pleased that our uh, boat driver, so basically we had what you would consider a pontoon.
Hmm.
And so he was really good because he was very respectful. We did not disrupt the animals, so we didn't get close enough where they'd have to move or anything like that. We stayed at a respectable distance. And so that is super important because you don't want to change their behaviors. You want to observe their behaviors. Um, and so I would totally agree with that, Scott. And if you have somebody who is not doing that, then that's a problem and they probably need to,
That needs to be some
I don't know.
feedback.
Yeah, so exactly.
All right. And how long were you at Edwards Lake?
We were there for, okay, so then we went on another outing into Queen Elizabeth National Park, where it was so great because we saw, of course, a lot of different animals, but we saw a serval, and which is an elusive. It's not that they're rare, but they are rare to be seen, so they're very elusive. And we saw a serval walking right on the road, right by us, and then within 10 minutes, a leopard crossed the road right in front of us. And so that was amazing. Then we stayed at the at the lodge. The next day we go out, we looked for lions. We saw lions. And then from there, we drove to Bwindi National Park, which is where the mountain gorillas are.
Can I go back for just one second?
Mhm.
For my students who maybe aren't familiar with what servals are, they're basically a savanna cat or a large, almost like a domestic cat, but they're very, very, very big. Usually, I think they're about 4 feet in height as far as like their overall like
Length
length,
and
and their
mhm.
tail is massive and stuff like that. So, but
Yeah,
they look very much like a domesticated cat, only much, much, much larger.
yes. And they seem to have a smaller head compared to their body size.
Hmm.
And but yes, that's true. In fact, I think, let's see, it would be the fourth in size, the fourth largest cat in um, in Africa. I believe that might be accurate because the civet and the serval are smaller than this. So to kind of give it in perspective, that might help a little bit. So
Okay.
smaller than a cheetah, but larger than a or a civet and a what did I just say? Anyway, but yeah, larger than a civet.
Okay. so so let's talk about the gorillas though. Okay.
Hmm.
So now you're over at the gorillas.
Yes.
Talk to me about the experience.
So we get up in the morning. We stayed at a beautiful, it had such a beautiful view. Figure we are about 7,500, 8,000 feet elevation.
Hmm.
We get to bed as soon as we could because we had to wake up early to go do our hike.
Mm.
When we get to the place, our driver went up and he did all the coordination on which group we were going to be in. So there are four different families of gorillas. Actually, I think they used three this particular day, three different families of gorillas.
Mm.
You don't know which group you're going to be assigned to. And the reason that's kind of important is some gorillas, they scout. And first thing in the morning, they have people go out and scout to see where they're located. Then they come back and they relay that information. And then they break people up into the three groups. And you might have to walk a long ways, or you might get a group that is closer into where you start.
Mm.
So be sure you're getting in shape before your trip. We happened to have about the middle of the road, so it wasn't the hardest, but it wasn't the easiest walk. And I'll tell you what, we started out and we actually went downhill and it was quite steep. And I'm thinking, we're going downhill. Wait a minute. That means we have to come back up this way. So it was crazy. But you're in the jungle. Everything is so green and you have the vines that are going across your feet. And you had to be careful because you would get as you're walking, a foot would get underneath one of the vines. And so you could very easily trip because of that. There were such steep areas that we'd have to get on our rear ends and slide down. Now, mind you, we had to come back up all of this. So it was pretty crazy. And then at a certain point, they said, and let me preface this by saying before we went out, they said, would you like to have a porter? Now, a porter is someone who will carry your backpack for you, and their job is to kind of help make sure you get up. And people said, well, be sure you do a porter because this is their livelihood and this and that. And my husband and I let's help them out. That would be very nice of us, So sure, we'll take a porter. Oh my gosh, I am so glad we took that porter. I ended up tipping him big time because he helped me. It was crazy. He would hold my hand in the tough areas. I'd be stepping in muddy, thick mud, wet areas, and he helped me get through that. And he carried my backpack the whole way. People were saying that people who did a lot of hiking would say this was probably considered a 4-star. I'm not much of a big-time hiker, but they would be like, this would be equivalent to about a 4-star hike. Yeah. Which I think 5 is the highest.
Yeah, it's a really durable hike. It sounds like.
Okay. And so I'm glad we got the middle of the road one and not the real hard one. We made it okay. I think we had enough preparation, but we finally get up to the mountain gorillas, and all of a sudden, there they go. They kind of started walking, and so everybody's like, is this the only chance we're going to have? Click, 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 and they're taking pictures, and I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. And then finally they kind of settled in and they stopped. And so Scott, you saw probably on my Facebook post, I was sitting there and I took a video with my cell phone. So I had my cell phone and I'm videoing this silverback. And you saw it was pretty amazing experience. And Beautiful. He looks over at me and then he walks right past me, and just amazing. So he walks past. Here's a story that, Scott, I don't know if this is good for me to tell or not so good for me to tell. But so he goes over to where my husband happened to be filming. And then I go on to see the other mountain gorillas. So in the meantime, my husband's over there and he has the video camera and he's kind of videoing, and the silverback looks at him. So he kind of puts it down and puts his head down as not to look at him right in the eyes, right?
Not to show aggression.
Correct. And so then the silverback started coming closer to him, and he's thinking to himself, no one's going to believe this. So I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to slowly kind of film him. So he's filming him, and all of a sudden, the silverback decided he wanted to give my husband. Now, Jeff is sitting on his rear end with his knees up a bit, and the mountain gorilla takes one step towards him and gives him a hip check. Now, if you know my husband, he's a pretty big guy. It sent him flying. So he fell down, and it was just the gorilla, just saying, hey, I'm in charge here. And just to give him kind of a little warning check. But Jeff says it was pretty solid. And he didn't know what was going to happen after that. Right? So he didn't know, is he coming after me or is he leaving me alone? He immediately went up and climbed a tree. And then they were up in the tree for probably about 15 minutes. And then they all decided to come down, and they sat in this one area, and we just sat right across from them. And so it was absolutely amazing. Some of my other videos you might have seen on Facebook shows that. It was fascinating.
It was fascinating, and the videos are just spectacular. By the way, for those who are not familiar with how we see a lot of the primates that are out there, and we tend to lump them into categories. And when you look at a chimpanzee, you're like, oh, well, that can't be that strong. Or a gorilla, it's like, actually, gorillas are some of the strongest creatures on the planet. So
Right.
when your husband gets hip checked, it's gonna send him flying.
Yeah.
They're very, very, very strong.
Yeah.
Was he hurt, or was it just kind of
No, not at all. In fact, he was like, "Oh my gosh, that was the most awesome experience ever." So, but my husband, he's about 230 pounds, and this gorilla was probably close to over 400 pounds.
Mhm.
And so they're massive.
Yeah.
And so it was funny. We were thinking my husband had a beard like you, Scott, but his is gray.
Mm.
So we don't know if his size and his beard being gray, silver, if he was just going to try to tell this big guy that you're the biggest of this group, but you don't, we don't know.
Yeah.
But they are very, very strong. Most primates, at least I can talk about baboons and chimps, what do they say, are like 10 times stronger than we are.
Yeah.
So I
Even
believe,
though they're very compact, don't let that fool you. So
right, exactly.
yeah, exactly. All right. And how long were you there at the gorilla camp for?
We were there for just one night. We stayed there one night. After the trek, we had an opportunity to go see the pygmy people, which I would recommend if you could. I've seen specials on them. They were the ones that were threatening the gorillas because of the bush meat. And so so what they've done is they've tried to help them create a different way to earn a living. And so that's what they're trying to do. But we were so exhausted after this hike that we didn't do that. But that's an option for people. And then finally, we did had to drive back. And so we made a stop on the way back, but it was mainly to get us back to Entebbe.
Nice. And you stayed there for, I assume, just the night, or a couple more hours, or whatever the case was?
We stayed overnight. So
Okay.
we stayed another day at the hotel,
Okay.
which I recommend. It was just a long travel day. So we just stayed one night. So this travel group that you're going to talk about in a little bit, Scott, this was our private tour. We had a friend of ours go with us. So there was just the three of us. That was it. And when we did the chimp walk and when we did the mountain gorillas, you meet up with other people and then break off from there. But for the most part, this whole trip was just the three of us and our driver. And so it was really whatever we wanted to do, we could do. It was
Wonderful.
really nice.
Awesome. So let's talk about the return slash disembarkation of that process. So you went to South Africa and you stayed there for a couple weeks, correct?
Huh? Correct.
Okay, perfect. And then from there, was it a straight shot? No, you went to Germany first and then
Yes.
back over to, and actually instead of going to Orange County, you decided to go to LAX instead.
Yeah, it was the best flight option
That
to
makes
do
sense.
that, given the airlines we were flying, that United partnership thing. So we did. So just one stop on the way back, which was nice,
Mhm.
and then into LAX where we were picked up.
Okay. Any problems with passport control or anything like that?
No, it was actually pretty quick. And I'm actually a little surprised, given soon after that is when they put in the restrictions from different countries.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad we missed that, but it was the start of that. So
Yeah.
let's see, I was going to pull up some notes here. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Sure. So let's talk about your post vacation then. Now, Uganda is not typically on anybody's bucket list, but that being the case, what are some of the pros of going to a place like Uganda?
Oh my goodness. One, it was such an incredibly beautiful green, green, green country. Culturally, we learned a lot. I was talking to you earlier, Scott, where the Uganda people are so friendly. They realize that you coming into their country is only going to help their country. We did some research on Uganda, and Uganda is one of the poorest countries in the world. And if you look at their per capita income, it equates, if you translated the amount to US dollars, it would be approximately $600 a year for the average person. So, or the median income. So, wow, I would have done, okay, so anyway, that's the pros. It's just so beautiful, great people. Never, Scott, you and I talked about this as far as being a little concerned about the dangers of going, oh my gosh, you're going to Uganda, you know, you hear about kidnappings or this or that. Not once did we ever feel threatened, just welcomed the whole time. So, for what it's worth.
Excellent. Now let's talk about some things to be aware of. You made mention to me before that because of the rock formations, because of the volcanic ash and things like that permeate the area, it unfortunately creates a situation for some of the native inhabitants' feet within that area. So you were saying there were some things that maybe you would do a little bit differently in the next time you would go on a trip like that.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of this, it's the elephantitis that this happens on their feet. And we did some research into it and found out that the preventative and the cure is washing your feet with soap. Go figure. Now, these people have to walk at times miles to get to water, and they bring a bucket back. And so they don't really have much water, but also they don't have soap. So if I were to go back, I'd probably take those travel bars of soap, maybe, and be able to hand those. And buckets, if you have the ability to get buckets there, that would be something I would do differently. They told us, so our driver was telling us about the kids, and we had this group of kids come up and they sang to us. It was the cutest thing you can imagine. And they were so cute. So we gave out some small change to them so they could have some money. And later our driver told us, it's best that you don't give them money because then they will drop out of school and pan. So we're like, oh.
I was told the same thing actually when I went down to Mexico many years ago, where it was the kids who were selling like chiclet gum, and there would be like these little kids, like there was one that was probably like 4 years old, and he had a hand with his little brother who was probably like maybe a toddler, and they were selling chiclet gum, and they were saying, please do not buy this from them. Their parents know that they are supposed to be in school at this point. So when you do that, it encourages the family to go that route when it shouldn't be in that case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we started handing out like apples and things like that. And so that's probably best, but we didn't know that going into this. We thought, oh, that'll help them. But money's the wrong thing to give them.
But it's a learning experience, and you learn something from that. So that's good for you on that piece.
Right.
So now, one last thing. Any value adds, maybe cost savings or best practices that you would recommend on this kind of a trip?
Yes, actually. Tips. We underestimated the amount of tips we needed to give people. You tip for everything. And then there turns out to be more people in your walk than you expected. So there's more rangers with you or porters or whatever. So just keep in mind to when you get to which, by the way, the currency in Uganda is protected. You cannot get it in the States before you go over. You have to get there to the airport or wherever and go, and I would do it at the airport because we had a friend go to the bank and was ripped off. It probably cost her almost 50% to get some Ugandan shillings.
Mm.
But we did it at the airport, and we would have gotten taken out more because we needed more money for tips.
Mm.
And they do take credit cards, but not the individual people that you would give tips to, right?
Yeah.
So as far as value added and savings, value added, the big value added would be have good hiking boots, waterproof, test them out, make sure if you notice any issues with blisters that you are prepared for that, or do some precautions by putting bandages on before you go on the hike. Wear 2 pairs of socks. Use a porter.
Just out of curiosity, how much was the porter approximately?
Well, my guy was worth more than, I couldn't.
Worth more than his weight in gold.
You know what, Scott? You can go online. I'm trying to remember now because they would tell you in shillings, but it's approximately $5 to $10 for your trip. So for your hike, I believe it was between $5 or $10.
So for the entire excursion, it's just $5 to $10 for them?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So we got back and we gave them that money. And got to the car and I said, "Where's my wallet?" And I pulled out a $20 bill. And I handed him. No, he had no clue what that $20 bill meant, but it's going to be more than he thinks probably. But
nice.
Anyway, they were, worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And but you can go online and they were really good about saying, here's how much money to do the driver, this and that. So
excellent. Now, the tour company that you went through was Africa Tours Adventure Limited. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And if people wanted to get more information, they could go to Africa Tours, that's with an S, adventure @gmail.com if they wanted to write to them, or for info on the specific gorilla park that you went to, they could go to info@Uganda Gorillas with a S at the end of it, Safari, that's singular safari.com, which is located also at www.UgandaGorillasSafari.com. Did I miss anything on that, or is that pretty much accurate?
No, I don't think so. Hey, just as a little tip, we had our driver's name was Rogers. And so you may want to ask if Rogers can do your tour. He was very good.
Excellent.
Let's see. This company was really great because it was a private tour, which I don't think I really understood initially. And he said, what kind of tour do you want to do? A 4-day, a 6-day, a 8-day? In hindsight, we did a 6-day tour. And I probably would have done a couple extra days and gone to Merchant Falls, which we didn't, but that's just something to think about if you head over there.
Excellent. Well, Jennifer, I would like to thank you again for sharing your information with us. We really appreciate it. This was really educational, so I appreciate your time and the wonderful pictures and everything that you provided to us as far as your insight goes. It was really appreciated. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Scott. This was always fun. So have fun, students. I hope you are able to make this trip because it was really worthwhile.
Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can click the bell icon at the top in order to be notified when there's new videos out. If you haven't already subscribed, please click the subscribe button. And if you like this video and you'd like to see more, hit the thumbs up. If you're listening on the podcast, we always appreciate a 5-star rating. So thank you so much for that. But until the next time, I am the Professor Travel, and make every day a travel adventure. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.